Hey guys, Haz here, Shield Canine. Today I am going to tell you how to properly use a prong collar. I'm talking about how to actually use this to train your dog and what not to do. So the first thing you have to understand about the prong collar, okay? It is primarily a tool for negative reinforcement. The Reader's Digest version of negative reinforcement is creating discomfort and then creating comfort and desirable behavior. The reason why I really like the prong collar is it's not limited to only a few types of negative reinforcement. You can use it across a vast spectrum in the negative reinforcement category, and you can also use it as a punisher, okay? And there is a time and a place for both in dog training. So there are two primary ways to use it. So if you're making directional pressure on the leash, this is great when you're trying to teach the dog to do something, right? So let's say I wanted to train a sit. I pulled upwards on the prong collar. I've created discomfort. The dog offers the desired behavior. I remove the discomfort. That's a very easy version of how you could use the prong collar to train the sit or to reinforce the sit. Down, same thing. You make the down pressure. It's uncomfortable. The dog offers the desired behavior. You remove the discomfort. And of course, you can add a reward in too, going into the positive reinforcement side of the equation, but don't worry about that right now. The great thing about the prong collar, why I really like to use it, is because a lot of dogs are very desensitized in the neck. They've basically grown up pulling, they've just basically learned to ignore a lot of pressure in the neck area, right? So when you use the prong collar, the dog is much more aware of pressure coming on and off the neck. So it enhances my ability to communicate with the dog, and it increases the rate at which the learning occurs. That's one way to use it. Here's the problem. When you make directional pressure, what happens is a lot of people try to do this to get things like pulling to stop, right? Or to correct a bad behavior. They just pull on the dog. And remember how I said this is negative reinforcement. There are some things you do not want to negatively reinforce, like pulling. Because if I'm using negative reinforcement on pulling, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna create more pulling. Because I'm creating pressure, and maybe in the beginning, it's enough that the dog does stop, but after a while, they start perceiving this as up pressure, and I'm gonna oppose the pressure. I'm gonna pull into it now, which is why a lot of dogs pull on the prong collar after a couple of weeks. Another big one, leash aggression, leash reactivity. People pull or they hold the dog back on the prong collar. So now you're creating discomfort, and the dog is showing arousal, reactive behavior, aggressive behavior towards another dog, and you're holding him on the collar. It's creating physical discomfort. It's actually amplifying the behavior. It's not reducing the behavior. That's where the idea that the prong collar makes things worse comes from. So there are times when directional pressure is good in training, and then there are times when you want to use something we call popping. Now what I'm doing here, I can deliver a very heavy pop, and I can deliver very light pops. And depending on what I'm trying to accomplish will depend on how I pop the dog on the leash. If I wanted to kind of encourage the dog to come to me, tuck, 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 just gentle, light pops, right? And when I'm doing this, what I'm doing is I'm creating the collars activating, releasing, activating, releasing, activating, releasing. When I just do that, the collar activated, and now all the pressure is staying on the collar, right? And it isn't releasing. And that has an impact on a lot of dogs. And again, depending on what you're trying to do, it can be productive or counterproductive. So I want you to think, this is generally, for me, light taps on the leash. I call it tapping because I'm going tap, tap, tap. Watch the leash. It makes pressure, release it, and that happens in a fraction of a second. There are times when I want the dog to do something, right? We're making more of a directional pressure. Lie down. Now, depending on how you're using the prong collar, depending on the dog in front of you, remember what I said, it can be a negative reinforcer. So I could be negatively reinforcing specific behaviors that I want or don't want if I don't know what I'm doing. And I can be positively punishing. So punishment is anything you do to remove a behavior. What you have to do for punishment is you basically create a consequence that overwhelms the intrinsic desire out of performing X behavior that you don't like. There are different ways to use this device. Remember, you don't get to decide. Your dog will tell you. So, for instance, if I wanted my dog to sit, and I'm a little bit ham-fisted, and I pulled up on this collar, and my dog screamed and started flailing around and overreacted and, peed itself and all sorts of things, I punished the dog and created suppression. I didn't negatively reinforce a sit. I probably created a lot of problems around that sit now. So I always advise you guys when you're using the prong collar, especially in the beginning, go light. Last part of this lesson, my dog's being reactive and going after other dogs. And I say no, and I give him a tap on the leash that I think is a pretty good tap. And he gets even worse. It was my intention to punish him, but I didn't. I negatively reinforced the reactive behavior. Now let's say I go 50% more strength the next time. So he goes and I say, no, and the dog goes, oh crap. That really sucked, and shows a suppressive emotion. Well, now I know I punished him in that instant for that specific behavior. So, the prong collar has a lot of benefits, but in the wrong hands it can be misused, just like any other device in dog training. So I hope this helps you guys. I hope it kind of starts you thinking a little bit. This is not a magic device. This is a dog training device, and it'll either help you or it'll hurt you depending on what you're doing with the dog. Check out our online courses. We have complete online courses on everything from how to train your dog off-leash obedience, competition obedience, protection training, reactive behavior, and so much more. Check us out, shieldk9.ca. You can train with us anywhere in the world for a very reasonable amount of money. Shieldk9.ca. Check us out.